What's up, guys? It's Ben with 2020 election predictions, and today I'm going to look at the JHK forecast Senate model. Um, I think that a lot of the times the presidential race can take the attention away from the Senate, but I really think that the Senate might even be more important than the presidency right now, because the only way that legislation can get passed is through the legislator. And I think that a lot of pundits have realized that the House is probably not going to flip in 2020. But really, I think that the Senate is a pure toss up right now. Earlier in 2019, and even before the coronavirus pandemic, I think people would have said that the Republicans hold an advantage in the Senate. Right now, as you can see here, this model actually has the Democrats having an advantage. I do think this is a little bit tilted towards the Democrats. I think that right now, potentially the Republicans maybe hold a slight advantage, but my number one predicted outcome right now is a 50-50% tie. And if Joe Biden wins, then that means that the Democrats will control the Senate. So let's kind of dive into each of these states and just kind of look at like what my opinion and how that compares to the states overall. And before I get too far into my video, I just want to remind y'all, please subscribe. Thank y'all so much. I got to 1,000 subscribers and I'm about to get my page monetized. And once I do that, we're going to do a massive giveaway. So thank you guys. So, all right, let's just kind of go from left to right and look at these states. So right now we have Arizona. Mark Kelly has an 82% chance to win, which is pretty interesting. Martha Mcsalley is the incumbent, although she was appointed. So she lost a race in 2018, in fact. So this is actually a lot different from the 2018 results. Martha Mcsalley only lost by between 2 and 3 points, and this is projecting kind of a 7-point route, how Mark Kelly is going to win. And this is all has to do with the polling. So the experts project this to be a closer race, which I kind of agree with the experts, because I think when you have President Trump and Joe Biden on the ballot in a swing state like Arizona, we aren't going to see this like 8-point victory by uh, Mark Kelly. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what the margin of victory is. And I agree with this assessment that Mark Kelly probably has close to an 80% chance of winning the election. Next up is the state of Colorado. This kind of surprises me that John Hickenlooper actually has, according to this model, a less chance of winning compared to uh, Mark Kelly in Arizona, because I do think Colorado is the state that leans towards the Democrats more. And I mean, this is just kind of a little bit shocking to me. I think there is some concern about will John Hickenlooper come out of the primaries undamaged. He has more primary challengers than Mark Kelly does in Arizona. The Democratic Party has consolidated around Mark Kelly in Arizona. But I mean, just looking at the polls here, I mean, Cory Gardner isn't even giving above 40%, and John Hickenlooper is getting above 50%. I mean, the Democrats have like a double-digit advantage here. And I mean, I think Cory Gardner is toast. I think that the RNC should pull all their money out of Colorado, because it's frankly not worth it. I do think that the Republicans should invest a lot of money in Arizona just because it's a presidential swing state and a Senate swing state. Colorado less so on the presidential level because I think Joe Biden will win this. But I think the Republicans will try very hard to keep the seat for Martha Mcsalley, but it's not going to do much. Next up, going to Montana. Montana is a really interesting state because no one really considers it a swing state, but it does have some Democratic streaks. It has a Democratic governor right now. In 2018, it reelected a Democratic senator in John Tester. So this will be a race that I'll be looking at very closely. And right now, according to the poll, Steve Bullock is ahead. I do think that these polls will become closer come election day, and with President Trump in the on the ballot, I do think that like Steve Daines will ride his coattails a lot. But I probably agree more with the experts in this race. I do see the state as actually tilting towards the Republicans right now. So this model has it about as a 4-point victory by Steve Daines. I think this could actually get closer come election day. I project President Trump will win the state between 10 and 12 points, which was a lot less than he did in 2016. I just think that Montana isn't as tied to the national partisanship overall. I think that in Montana and especially in these Midwestern states, you have a lot more like independent voters. So I do think that the Republicans will be able to hold on to that state, but it will be very interesting. Next up, moving to Iowa. This state has shifted a lot, so I'm actually really interested. So, like right now, earlier it had Joni Ernst at close to a 70% chance of win, but recently has got closer to almost like a 50-50 tie. I don't think the state will be as competitive as people think it will be. In fact, I think Iowa will be less competitive overall than Montana. Which I think surprises some people. I mean, the experts have it as the same margin as the experts had it in Montana, but the polls. I mean, Joni Ernst has been leading in the polls a lot, and just recently she's dipped down. But I expect Joni Ernst to dip right back up as it comes closer to election day, and as like Donald Trump is able to contrast himself against Joe Biden. I've talked about this in the past that right now there's a lot of focus on Donald Trump and his response to coronavirus, and I think this is hurting him. If the attention then moves to Joe Biden, then I think that it will help the Republicans' chances of like winning states like Iowa on the Senate and presidential level. Kansas, I do think it will be a Republican hold, even though there's some talks about Chris Kobach if he's the nominee. I don't think he'll be the Republican nominee, but if he is, the GOP chances of winning the state will decline. John Cornyn in Texas, I think he'll win this. Alabama, I mean, I think this should be close to 100% chance. I mean, Doug Jones does not have a chance of winning. Tommy Tuberville is going to win this state by over 10 points, probably close to 15. I mean, this is just silly to me right now that any of these are in single digits. But we will see. Please let me know your opinion on this. This is pretty interesting. So the special election is a little bit tighter, but not that much tighter, basically implying that these states aren't going to be that close. It's funny, on their presidential forecast, they actually have Georgia going to Joe Biden. But I think what this represents is that David Perdue and Doug Collins, if he comes out of the primary, are more popular on the statewide level than Donald Trump. And I think this holds true. I think you'll see some people voting for David Collins and Doug Collins that don't vote for Donald Trump. But I do think based on these margins, I would expect Donald Trump's numbers to improve here too. I've been pretty critical of this forecast for having Joe Biden having an advantage in Georgia. I do not think that will hold. I think that's just a temporary thing. Next, I'm going to Michigan. I mean, this frankly surprises me. I think John James is a lot stronger candidate than this forecast is giving him credit for. The polls have not been very favorable, but the fundamentals of the state are not plus 12. I mean, Barack Obama didn't even win the state by 12 points. And I frankly more agree with the experts. I think it's going to be even closer than 5 points. I think John James could potentially even outperform Donald Trump. And I know that the polls coming out of Michigan have not been favorable for the Republicans, but they weren't favorable in 2016. And even in 2018, I mean, John James only lost the seat by I think 5 or 6 points. And I predict he will outperform these numbers in 2020 because 2018 was a wave year for the Democrats. But I do think I do think Michigan might be a little bit out of reach, but not this out of reach. That's this model implies. North Carolina, I think I've looked at some models. It's going to be the most expensive Senate race ever. I think over $300 million potentially. And that is because, I mean, North Carolina really could go either way. I mean, it's really going to go back and forth. And a lot of polling is going to be done. I mean, I think right now Cunningham holds a slight advantage, but the experts have this completely deadlocked. And then this is true. The fundamentals of the state North Carolina traditionally has been a Republican state. I mean, I think Barack Obama had a one-off victory in 2008, but Tillis is not a very strong incumbent. I mean, he's not getting above 40% in the average of the polls. I actually do think on the Real Clear Politics he is, but on this he isn't. So there are going to be a lot of undecided voters. And if President Trump can coalesce his support with Tillis, I think that he will be able to win. I do think President Trump will outperform Tillis in the state, which is not what this model is suggesting right now, because it's giving Tillis a better chance than Donald Trump. But we will see how this turns out comes election day. Maine right now, Susan Collins is down, and she has been all this time. But Susan Collins traditionally has been pretty popular, and there have only been a couple of polls that have Gideon up by a little bit, but these polls have all been in the margin of error. I think the biggest one was about 4 points. So Collins definitely has that name recognition that Sarah Gideon doesn't. I do think at the end of the day, Sarah Gideon's probably going to win this state. But it is going to be very, very close. And I do think that Susan Collins could very easily have an upset. So if we take this like right now, like where each person has an advantage, it would be a 50-50 tie. I do think like there's a better chance that Cal Cunningham or that Tom Tillis wins North Carolina than there is of the Democrats winning in Iowa and Montana. So that's why I actually think that this model underestimates the Republicans, and it's really interesting here. So this distribution shows like the most likely Senate compositions, and the highest is 52 seats for the Republicans, which is 2 more than what this model is implying right now. And it's pretty interesting. It's 50-50, but right now Joe Biden is projected to win a lot more than Donald Trump. So right now, like my Senate projection is 50-50, but I think come election day, it's probably going to go closer to 51-49 or maybe even 52-48. So pretty interesting that Iowa is the tipping point. I expect the tipping points will be Montana and North Carolina. I expect Maine to go over here. But I think this is a really cool model to look at and see how it's changed over time. So you see the Republicans held an advantage over here. And then this is not seats. This is just percentage. So that's it for this video. Please subscribe here if you haven't already, and be on the lookout for more videos in the future.